Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're checking out Hunting the Parenting, the theory and analysis by QosmicVoid. Last time around, we saw the first half where he really dove into the entire bit about the Oracle and not Horus, there's a difference there, and how that was such a major turning point in ways that I didn't even realize were actual words. It really changed the entire concept of this from, oh, this is a little kind of scary a bit, to holy shit, he just outlined exactly what's going on here, and I still have no idea. I'm here for this. What I'm basically saying is, we got the entire second half. I'm assuming he's going to get to the most recent episode of Hunting the Parenting, which was... If you haven't seen it, I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a thing. This video will probably be spoilers, unless it's not, in which case, well, egg on me. That's never happened before. More importantly, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up, and let's get started.
Again, I don't think we have enough information to make sense of the prophecy yet. We're looking at an incomplete picture right now. Hell, we're not even sure how literal the bits we do know are. They could be far more abstract than we're giving them credit. Mastering Luna could mean beating the supernatural creatures that prowl at night for all we know.
While I would definitely say that is probably a thing, Bruf Alpha Busa, his team seemed very grandiose back on what they were just working on for TTS, or if the Emperor had text-to-speech device. I don't think toning down expectations is probably the right way to approach this. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I'm going to go on the other side with that one. Grant, I assume Cosmic's also taking the same approach and just giving the other alternative.
Mastering Luna, mastering the night, because the moon is only out at night. There's just too much information that we don't know about this whole thing yet. It's certainly a source of interesting speculation, no doubt about that. And like I said, someone on the Ogre Papanong team is giggling to themselves, knowing that they have done a good job at making the most infuriatingly impossible to deconstruct prophecy known to man.
If it is only a single person, I will be heavily surprised.
Kudos, whoever you are, you prick. There's also
I know I already saw this part. I just want to listen again.
To mention, and that's that this isn't a prophecy and this isn't a demon, but a fae that's just fucking with boy. I don't give this one too much credit because, like, the fae shouldn't know about the Elohim. It also uses the term milklings, which is a slur for changelings who are...
See, that's the thing. I don't know a lot about the fae because every time I ask about them, the general response from everyone is, don't fuck these guys, ignore them.
Fae, kind of complicated, but thought I'd mention it. Alright, mentioned wraiths earlier.
The store.
That would be a perfect lead into the next theory that surrounds them, but to do that properly, we need to talk about another theory. Namely, about Dee's age. Oh, good.
That is... Oh. Okay, we're dropping... Wait, it's actually spelled D-E-E? Oh, wow, I've just been using the initial. I just realized what I said. I guess we've been in this place before. Higher than the street. You can even say deja vu.
So this one will be a little different in that I'm not going to present my own theories, and I'm mostly just going to give my thoughts on other people's theories. There is a large chunk of the HDP fandom that believes, to the point it's unofficially considered explicit canon, that Dee is far older than he seems to be.
That isn't technically even non-canon. Just the earliest time period that we have confirmation of from him talking about was, I think it was the 20s or the 30s, where he was fucking around with horse. So he's at least in his... He could be a very young horse parent in the... Sorry, I'm not good at math. Between 70s at a very young age, they grew up really fast, to at least the 90s. And that's just that time period. So he's at least that old minimum. Although this is in the 2011 age, I think. No, it's 2006. So my math was wrong regardless. Whatever.
Now, there's a fair bit of evidence to suggest such a thing. The fact that he looks younger than Dor, and Dor looks like he could be in his 50s. During the preview of Kevin, he says that he has been fighting the supernatural since the 90s. Kevin accused it of being the 1890s, and Dee doesn't argue that fact at all.
I just love the fact that, sorry, this part right here, it's 90s, not even that.
Kevin accused it of being the 1890s, and Dee doesn't argue that fact at all.
The fact that old is what gets him, not the time period.
He will often refer to units of weight in terms of minas, which are a unit of measurement invented in Babylonia during the Mesopotamian era.
Although I fully come to expect at this point, even if that is his initial time period, I fully expect him to understand all the others and just doing it to fuck with people. It seems so much a D thing, even if it is his natural one. The only reason he's going to keep using it, and I don't doubt this in the slightest, is going to be he's just doing it because no one else gets it, and it makes it funny. And also it does play into his overall aesthetic of, I know everything, so don't actually take me seriously because I know everything that's useless, and it's all crazy. So whenever I say something incredibly serious, I let it slip because I need to say it for no other reason. No one's going to listen. It's all fine. Which was a great way to look at his characterization.
And has been used throughout the region. There are some that say him mentioning the game of is proof of this, which... okay, permit me to go on an anthropological rant for a moment here. Assuming the was from Mesopotamia and knew what the game of was, he would not call it the game of You want to know how I know that? Because the ancient Mesopotamians didn't call it the game of The game boards were found by a British archaeologist in the 1920s during excavations at the Royal Cemetery at
Which would also mean that that's coming back to the 20s. Which is when he was fucking around with horse. I wonder if they're going to tie this part in.
In Iraq. It's named after an archaeological site. We have no idea what they called the game. It would be like if someone in the year 3000 found a Monopoly board in Ukraine, Kiev, and called it the game of Kiev. No, this cannot be used as proof that D is ancient.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
Then again, assuming the D is this old, knowing the writers D probably never bothered to learn the actual name of the game and just decided to call it the game of after seeing it in Or perhaps I'm overthinking this entire situation and Dean knows that calling the game of something other than the game of would lead to questions that he can't answer, so he just doesn't. Analyzing theories like this does weird stuff to my brain, I've learned. Sorry about
like how he's complete anarchist and doesn't like doing anything that involves engaging with the man, but he has custom printed favorite son mugs. Just throwing it out there.
That I like anthropology and I feel like I'm losing my mind the more of this that I do.
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. If he went into the anthropological aspect right now, of all the time periods that could be mentioned, I love this kind of shit. When I'm not recording, I'm usually watching a lot of Simon Whistler videos about history, and I love this. So if Cosmic ever really went heavy on this period, or anything anthropological and goes full deep dive, I might not make a reaction for it, but I'm going to be there just listening to him in rapt attention right now. Cosmic, please take the hint. I don't think it'll do well on YouTube because it's YouTube and it'd be a new idea. But you can guarantee I am going to put as many hours in as you have a video of. If that is a long time period that I'm never going to see my family again during. I mean, it's not the first time I've done that. I get lost in videos. It's a thing. It's a problem. I have no restraint.
Anyway, yes, there are a fair few hints that D is a lot older than he appears to be, and from that a number of theories have spiraled out around who he is, up to and including that he is either Abel, the brother Cain supposedly killed or led to him being cursed by God, which led to the rise of vampires, or...
That one I really personally don't credit just because having Abel be so weak as normal human level at this age feels kind of anticlimactic. I mean, it would be cool, but he'd have to be hiding a lot more knowledge than he seems to. He's hiding a lot. But just that much knowledge and palling around here seems like, really? It feels off.
Seth,
could be
the third child of Adam and Eve. Let's go over the Adam and Eve child thing first. I should try about this one. I hate this idea. Look, this is more of what I mentioned when I talked about Kitten. To me, this takes away from the original pitch of the series, that the family were just a bunch of roughly regular humans fighting the world of the supernatural.
I know he's already talked about this one. I'm still going to disagree just because they have a talking horse brother-ish thing. Also, I'm fully expecting he's just some kind of demon who is actually just possessing the horse at this point because it ain't a horse that's normal because it can throw up, which we've already covered in the previous video. So I think the premise is they're a normal group of crazy people who are normal adjacent, but also they're really kind of off normal. Like the kilter is a little twisted at that point. I was going to say twisted, but twisted works just as well because it doesn't make sense.
To be fair, I wouldn't mind a story about the family of supernaturals fighting the darker aspects of that world, but that wasn't the pitch I was sold on. As for D being the child of Adam and Eve, you know how I mentioned back that what I found most appealing about World of Darkness was the idea of random, everyday people getting dragged into a world beyond their understanding and having to just figure out how to deal with it? Yeah, this gets completely obliterated if D is the child of Adam and Eve, and by extension, technically the grandchild of God himself.
And not just in the metaphorical sense, which most people go for. as much as I just said I don't entirely agree with him, I get where he's coming from, and I don't disagree if he's too high of a position. It's like what I just said about him being, Abel, not Cain. It seems like a downgrade, and I'm coming in from a different reason, of course. I think it's a downgrade from how high they are in the terms of what their name means versus where they're at, where if this is just someone who's struggling through it, but has tons of experience and age, and there's more to them than they believe, and that's just going to come up, that would also be interesting. But making them immediately the bigwig is, I'm pretty sure TTS was enough of already being the bigwig, so they might avoid that just because it's so similar at this point.
If that's the reason that D wants to kill Cain, then suddenly the series transforms into borderline gods fighting over the fate of mortals, and the mortals can't do a damn thing while their fate is decided for them.
Yeah.
I feel like we'll have moved thoroughly away from the core premise of World of Darkness's appeal. And putting all of that aside for a moment, I suppose ultimately, what would be gained exactly from D being a child of Adam and Eve? Yeah. It'd make for a cool set piece, I suppose, but I'm not sure how any of the themes or characterization will be helped by it.
At that point, you almost don't need it to be a fight against Cain. It's more, sup, your kids suck. Which, admittedly, I could actually see Big D shouting very easily. So, if the payoff is literally a joke that they're not actually fighting, that would kind of work. But also, that would be a big setup to a joke that might not land well with at least some fans.
It kind of feels like a theory that's designed to be, but what if X cool thing happened? And okay, and what if he was a fucking astronaut? What is added by that fact to the core premise of the series exactly? Kitten being a werbeast or a kinfolk, or Marcus being a mage would add a new dynamic to the series. It would be new mechanics, new avenues for exploring stories, and a new way of introducing those concepts to the wider audience. Even if I'm more in the wait-and-see camp on those things, I can understand the appeal and the narrative benefits of such a move.
I think he's kind of winning me over on this one.
I'm at a loss as to what specifically would be added by making D a child of Adam and Eve. It would just be kind of like, okay, cool. How does this change how D interacts with the world? How does this change the story? How does this recontextualize previous events?
There would be a recontextualization. It makes it so that he's not actually fighting, he's just getting by, which it does recontextualize it. It makes it worse. Because of the premise we've seen, makes sense. If someone's afraid of what's going on, they're afraid of their knowledge because they know what happens if they talk. But anyone who's been alive that long, who hasn't acquired a lot of power, it's just weird. And D has knowledge, which is his power, but he's not using it as effectively as could be done, which could be because there's a lot of other factors. But if he's that old, he would be old enough that he could have said, yeah, I palled around with my brother's kids. They were assholes, but they were fine up until everything went to hell. Which is kind of how shit happened. I'm oversimplifying because I don't get it nearly as much. But I am oversimplifying the oversimplifications I was given. I'm sure that won't ever backfire. But yeah, it does seem like a downside because it's not someone fighting against the world then. It's someone who's just dealing with it and doesn't really want to change it because they've already been there so long. In fact, it would actually make it so much harder to deal with that, because if it's a revelation near the end, it would actually narratively destroy the entire thrust of it. Having a cool backstory is fine, but if you start at the highest level of recognition, you really got to ask, okay, you were there at the beginning. What the fuck you been doing since then? The answer is always not going to be enough, so it kind of gets rid of Big D's character as a rebel and more of a general useless person who floundered around and made no impact on history. You can write around it, but you got to work to earn it at that point instead of just not doing that and not having that problem to start with.
What new adventures do we get from this that we wouldn't have been able to get if he wasn't their child? I kind of feel like it feels like
doable,
it's being suggested by people who think that every character needs to have some twist associated with them, or by people that simply refuse to let HDP be its own thing and are obsessed with making it text-to-speech too, right down to D being some utterly divine being. Sometimes a spade is just a spade, and it's best left as a spade. Also,
yeah, I'm glad he's just saying the also right here. Maybe he's cluing it, maybe he's not, but he's bringing it up. And as far as I know, I think this is the first time he's really gone full in on this episode, specifically the latest one.
While we're on the subject, no, D is not the Emperor in the 21st century. I know that's your headcanon, but your headcanon is wrong. Stop it. He's the spiritual successor at best. And even then, I've gone on to say I think that that's unfair to D.
honestly, we know so little about the Emperor at that time period that it really doesn't have any effect on him. For all we know, he could be a 1-to-1, and no one could say otherwise because there's literally nothing in canon. And I mean that both as GW canon and Alpha Busa canon, because the one episode they had palling around at that time period was Shaman, things happen, moving forward, which is admittedly even more than GW has. So yeah, but Alpha Busa has gone on the record. Its spiritual successors is what they're doing. Now, could they change their mind? Yeah, easily. It's why everything an author says outside of the work that's published and finalized, and before they decide to update it, because that's the thing, especially when written processes, it's kind of subject to change. So grain of salt is always important.
References, tongue-in-cheek jokes, sure, I love that. But let HDB be its own thing. I am begging you, please. It deserves that respect. Man, I've gone on to piss off basically everyone with these takes, haven't I? No one's going to be happy with me by the end of it.
I've never had anything I've done ever piss anyone off. That is something I would never understand. Still stand by them, though. Wait, what? Never done that.
All of this. I just don't like the idea of all the family being these super unique, rare, super special, supernatural creatures. It's good for influence from each World of Darkness property, sure, but I think it takes away from that ultimate appeal that it is just random regular people who got caught up in all of this. I'll tell you what does work for me though, okay? D being ultimately just some random guy from that time period who has somehow survived this long. Maybe he's from a family of hunters. He's suggested as much, so he's in the know more than most, but ultimately just some random bloke. And he isn't immortal, he just doesn't age. And could be...
Technically, that is immortal. Although there's a lot of different variations of immortality. And that comes down into the word itself, because we've introduced so much gray into that word that immortal could mean anything from they can't die, they can't be injured, they are perpetual existence that just is, to, yeah, if you stab them, they never get better, but they just kind of exist with it, which I think was a premise in a 90s era movie. And honestly, I refuse to find out because it sounds like the most depressing comedy I've ever seen. I think it would be technically a black comedy for that reason. And I don't want to deal with that. I really don't.
Killed assuming that someone got a good shot in. That to me works fine, because that way D is still an accomplished hunter in his own right. He's not fundamentally special. He's just some random dude who ended up with the ability to live far longer than most, and everything he's done since then has been of his own skill. He survived on his own merit. He had to learn and fight. And if this were the case, it feels like we'd gain all the advantages of seeing the world in the ancient days without any of the baggage of his proximity to godhood. I'm more than okay with this. That's fine. That can work.
Yeah, which is probably what they're aiming for.
My 2 cents on that issue. So now that we have D's age talked about, we can move on to one of the bigger mysteries of the series right now.
Oh, we're going straight to the 99p store.
These two is different. You're going to have to forgive me. I'm on some pretty heavy painkillers for my wisdom teeth as I record it. It's not ideal, but it is what it is.
I hope he's feeling better now.
The 99p store in the 2-part Audio Logs Blender Crusade is an interesting one. In it, D goes into a 99p store seeking to find a 99p blender like the glorious madman that he is.
Way more than the audience
expected. In one of the
expected.
back rooms and falls down into it. When he awakens, he finds himself in another 99p store, where he encounters a blue man at the registry. Despite being immensely knowledgeable about the supernatural, D doesn't have even the faintest idea what this creature is.
And I understand, because I legitimately have no idea what was going on this entire episode. I thought it was, okay, vampire stuff, and by the end it looked like vampire stuff. But then this entire sequence right now with the blue man, I've heard people say, yeah, this is what I think it is. But I got no idea, man. Everyone I've talked about World of Darkness has been very knowledgeable. And when they don't say something, it's because they said it wasn't worth knowing or it's annoying. I've been given a lot of theories about this, but nothing that people were really certain about. And that's, in its own right, kind of terrifying.
As he's catapulted out of the whatever it is, he awakens to find that a blender he picked up in the store is now in his hands. He even concluded that he didn't actually fall into this hole, because the 2 workers that were at the store would have had to pull him out of it if he had done, and he fell for seemingly far longer than would have been possible for them to do that. But he still has the blender, which suggests he did physically go there. He refers to this as having been there, but also having not been there. So what is the deal with this 99p store? Or more accurately, what is the pit about, and where did D wind up? My guess is that the pit is a portal of some sort, and is part of the Penumbra, more specifically the Shadowlands. Okay, the penumbra is difficult to explain, so I'm going to just take it from the wiki.
Did it say lower dark?
The penumbra, also known as the Earth's shadow, is the spirit world directly surrounding the physical world. Many, but not all, terrain features have reflections there. A penumbra is a spirit realm which is linked to a physical world and separates the two with the use of a gauntlet. While a spirit world can appear identical to its material counterpart, it's usually twisted through the lens of concept, metaphor, and point of view.
Do they mean like a physical gauntlet or like a gauntlet of things you have to run through? The second one seems more narrative, but the first one also might be just because weird words.
Usually you have to step through the penumbra in order to reach the respective umbral realm. Celestial bodies such as the Moon, Venus, or Mars have their own respective penumbra. Basically, they're pocket dimensions around the world, and different planets have their own respective penumbra. Someone's going to get mad at me for that simplification, but you do better.
So, almost like a personalized warp per planet. I mean, kind of fits. Hell, it's probably even created around the same time period. Granted, they were all probably inspired by basic mythology of other worlds. So, for the same reason, you could say it's probably the same thing as... Oh, I was going to say the Far Side, but that's not even completely different. That's a sci-fi thing.
Anyway, the penumbra and its constituent regions are full of all manner of spirits. One being the Nexus Crawler. This isn't relevant to anything whatsoever, but...
No, it's not. Deep dreaming, far dreaming, near dreaming. This was still here. Dynamism, wild. Yeah, sorry, I saw this. I thought, okay, I know the spheres. That's D&D. No, it's different. Neat.
If I had to witness these creatures, so do you, because you must suffer as I have.
That is a lot of teeth.
Anyway, again, the Shadowlands are the homes of the Wraiths, but simply they're ghosts. Roughly 5% of people become Wraiths in times of calm, although more do in times of strife, like war. The Shadowlands are an almost exact replica of the real world. Every single object in the real world has a counterpart in the Shadowlands. Take your house or the street that you are on as you watch this. It too exists in the Shadowlands. But Shadowlands also includes, for example, the World Trade Center, which were knocked down in 2001. So it have
everything that was.
Of ancient Rome or Mesopotamia, meaning that there are also echoes of buildings and objects lost which persist in this pocket dimension. So what is my evidence for this being where D ended up? Hunter the Parenting is a series which is very careful with wording and terminology, and
this guy was talking about more being made.
Notably, the White Wolf Wiki, which often takes direct quotes from World of Darkness sourcebooks, uses very specific wording. The Shadowlands are a reflection of the Skinlands, the Skinlands being Earth. And if you compare the 99p store that D first goes to in the mundane world, and then the 99p store that he encounters in the pit, it is reflected. This theory fits, but it doesn't...
I'll be honest, that literally never occurred to me. I stared at this for so long, both when I was recording the initial video reaction to it and when I was editing it because I thought it was cool. I got distracted again. And they cut down the line in the background. They amped up the shadows. They reversed the image. And then it looks like they changed a gradient on it. So things are actually less clear even with that on top of it. Looks like they digitized it a bit more.
Account for the writing on the front of the store in the underworld, which has completely changed, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure what it is, but I think it has Semitic influences. As an experiment, I put 99p land store into Google Translate, and when I got to Hebrew, I found at least this one character here, which appears to be a near-perfect match, but in order to keep the image mirrored, I then flipped the result and it stopped resembling the writing on the store at all. What it
Anna, Kappa, and something TOAP. That it still looks like English on this side though.
Means, if anything, is beyond me, but I thought it might be worth mentioning to see if anyone smarter than I can do anything with that information. Other evidence for the theory is built into the rest of the episode. At the start, D makes it a point to do some people watching, and while this can be him being his normal quirksome self, or him surveying the area for any potential threats, on a writing level, it serves as a reminder that there are in fact people in the store, which is then contrasted by the Shadowlands. There are still people in the Shadowlands, just significantly less of them. Which would in theory bring us to the Blue Man, if I had anything in particular that I could say about it. Being completely honest, I'm not sure what exactly they might be. The obvious answer is a wraith, as I mentioned. Wraiths are the souls of mortals that died on Earth, usually ones that died unfulfilled or with unfinished business. D seems to recognize the Blue Man once they drop the facade and begin to laugh at the ignorance of man. This reinforces the idea of it being a wraith. This is someone that...
Oh, and they made a bigger face on this, the wider one. I think I remember this part, yeah. And how they actually changed a bit here. They had the big eyes, and then they completely cut in. The image did change, yeah, and then it was almost completely hollowed out on this one.
One that Dee used to know. I think that this might be why Dee is genuinely horrified by them. It could be a physical corpse possession, like a zombie. This would be called risen. That could explain why their skin is blue, but I don't honestly have anything to back up that speculation. Beyond my belief that it's a wraith, I have absolutely no idea what else it could be. Like many other theories in Hunter the Parenting, and interestingly enough, just like Dee said during his and Kitten's conversation in the first audio log, there are things which match and which don't match with this being a wraith. You know, I'm starting to think that the first audio log was just these are the creatures we're going to be dealing with and how we're going to screw the viewers foreshadowing episode. But
honestly, I thought it was the viewers don't know what we're talking about and we need to enlighten them, which would actually make a lot more sense when it comes to foreshadowing, because the viewers don't know what we're talking about and we need to enlighten them because these are going to be our plot points. You know what? One of these days, I just need to take some time to rewatch the series to get what the hell is going on. Maybe make a day of it or something.
But back to the point, assuming that the Blue Man is a wraith, then it does raise the question of why, if this was someone who lived on Earth, they would act so, well, inhuman. The Blue Man does not act or speak like a person would. It's mostly the same motions, sure. They're working at checkout, they speak to Dee as a customer, wraiths? But there's an otherworldly aura to them. They speak in a monotone, they use extremely clinical, impersonal language, and respond to Dee's ramblings not with sheer confusion and bewilderment as they did in the store above, but by barely even reacting, and when they do, they respond in very strange ways. They talk about growth, about the world of fathers turning into the world of sons, and things being as they are in the way that they should be and being there to grow. Frankly, I don't know what that's about.
Yep.
What about the 99p store itself, though? Well, it's pretty likely that the store is just that, a 99p store.
I mean, they did kind of explain at the end that it is explicitly a front, and she did mention a bit that there was weird shit going on, but I need more information.
The fact that it was built on an abandoned chalk mine is interesting.
Yep.
True, it could suggest that this particular place has a naturally occurring connection to the penumbra which the store and the mine were constructed to prevent the general public from falling into. The store is also managed by someone who seems to be a ghoul, or at the very least is loyal to the Camarilla Regent in the area.
Yep.
Or what vampires want with this place. Well,
admittedly, the Camarilla Regent, if it is the Shaman XP, is kind of helping out Dee somehow. If only in the sense of, oh yes, I like watching you flail around. For all I know, that could be the extent of it. I don't know yet.
Well, there is some lore that some clans can actually connect, interact, and even store items within the Shadowlands, using it as a sort of container of sorts. So maybe that's what we're seeing? The Camarilla using this territory as a storage unit or as a place to hide during the day? There is a vampiric connection there. But this is my guess, because this is very funny to me, but there's also a fair bit of evidence to suggest this. This 99p store is the Camarilla Chantry, a meeting place, a hideout, and a base of operations for the...
Wait, that's what a Chantry is? Sorry, I just thought Dragon Age for a bit there, so it sounds completely weird to me. I'll get over it eventually.
Region. What is my evidence for this? In Big D's Guide to Avoiding Arrest, Chapman mentions that his regent, and presumably the Chantry by extension, are in Great Yarmouth. D is headed to Great Yarmouth at the start of the audio log. The store owner seems to recognize Kevin's name, and most interestingly, when he talks about it in the probing of Kevin, Kevin mentions that he had to scrounge for arcane lore from the shelves of the 99 pen stores. That's a lot of things coinciding. So my guess is that this store is being used as a chantry. It is admittedly a lot of circumstantial evidence, but I think it makes sense. With that, at a close...
I mean, it could also just be that it's not so much a chantry, but as a front, it's a front he went to because of that. And the easiest way to make sure no one finds out why the same guy is shopping here, who always looks the same, is to be the person who would see them and already know about it. Actually, that makes a lot more sense even then.
Let's go to what I think for many is the main reason that we're here. Let's talk about the murder mystery whodunit of Chapter 4.
Yeah! Holy shit, it was only 4 episodes. I mean, there was also the audio logs, which make it feel much bigger, but this was literally just the 4th episode. Sorry, man, that's blowing my mind.
Here we go, the big one. In Chapter 4, we learn a ghoul has infiltrated the Yarmouth chapter house of the Arcanum. Kevin revealed this information to Dee, and Dee took the family to go and uncover the imposter. From there, it's become a mystery as people started running off, doing their own thing, their own investigations and interrogation tactics and conflicts with one another. A whole lot of stuff happened all at once, from a Spit having a mental breakdown and fat...
Yeah, I'm just going to throw it out there now. Personal guess, Occam is the ghoul. And he did not do the thing that we're all thinking of at the end of the episode.
You trying to help him through it, to Occam being attacked, to Blacklaw trying to torture information out of people. There are a lot of brewing threads all happening at once. By the end of the episode, Fatigue has been brutally...
Also, yeah, that's him as a kid, isn't it? That's probably Fatigue. Shit.
Murdered. Spit is cowering on the floor, Giles is locked in a room, and nearly half the cast is unaccounted for. So the question is this. Who did this?
Yeah, they actually put up a safe for work version of this because the first one was intense. I'm not sure if the first one's still up. I've seen it. I don't want to go look again because they decide to show their artistic chops in detail I never wanted, and honestly, I'm impressed and terrified in equal measure.
Who's responsible for what has happened here? Who is the ghoul? There are a lot of moving parts to all of this, and a lot of information to consider. Occam's razor is a principle that states that the most obvious solution is likely the correct one.
And that's usually why I'm saying right now the most obvious person to be the ghoul, the one who would have the highest amount of access, the one who has an entire board showing, hey, here's all the people who died, and here's an ever-decreasing number of dead people. I'm assuming hunters would be the guy in charge making a deal. Just throwing it out there.
And considering that we have a character introduced in this chapter who is called Occam, with a sharp beard, presumably from using a razor,
my God,
it would dictate that we at least consider the most obvious answers. So let's break it down. Here are our suspects. What do we know here? How can we narrow them down? In the probing of Kevin, we know that Kevin has been on the run from the Camarilla for, as he puts it, years. And he knows about the existence of the ghoul in the Arcanum chapter house.
Although, considering the Camarilla regent, potentially, was watching the entire time on the run, might have been thinking you're on the run more than anything else.
This must mean, by definition, that our suspects must be people who have been within the Arcanum chapter house for years. We also know in the audio log, Marcus Goes Clubbing, that Grimmel, despite being a member of the Arcanum, has no idea who Brock, Spit, and Giles are, despite their work as the security for the chapter house. And we know that this audio log happens between chapters 3 and 4, because the events of 3 are mentioned, and there's no...
For anyone wondering what he means, it's Marcus being the mummy, because being completely fucked up by shooting his own legs and then jumping out a window. It got bad, man.
Non-linear storytelling happening here, because if there was, then Grimmel would know who the three of them were by the end of the murder mystery's entire escapade. This must mean that they are very recent hires. Spit even confirms this. Therefore, this means that the ghoul cannot be one of those three. It simply doesn't add up. Now, one of the implications of the episode is that there isn't just one supernatural creature here, but at the very least, two. We know that there was a ghoul because of what Kevin said, but the evidence that there is a secondary creature comes from Fatigue's murder. Put simply, he was utterly torn to shreds, and there appeared to be...
I just noticed they have the dog stained with its mouth. There's blood everywhere. There's blood in the wolf statue's mouth. I'm sure that's not important.
To be claw marks all over his torso. There's also the fact that, put simply, the ghoul was after information about the hunters. It seemed to have already acquired that information. Killing Fatigue doesn't make any amount of sense at this point, especially not now. Occam was attacked, but if we assume that the ghoul did that, why kill Fatigue but not Occam? Killing Occam could have ensured that their identity was kept secret at least for a longer period of time, as Occam had a ritual that would uncover the traitor. Killing Fatigue, whom doesn't seem capable of aiding in figuring out who the ghoul is, but sparing Occam, who can, is backwards. To me, this suggests that the ghoul doesn't want to hurt any of the Arcanum members, or at the very least not kill any of them. They're not even willing to kill the single biggest threat to their identity being uncovered. But
yeah, it's like there's someone in the chapter who actively is trying not to see his members die. And they had a board outline. I keep coming back to this. In his entry, when you first start talking to Occam, he has a board behind him charting out the deaths of what I'm assuming are the members and how those tallies goes down. It just, literally, did anyone else not notice that? Is that just like me? Am I hallucinating this? Am I fully Mandela effect this thing or what?
But something else is willing to kill Fatigue. All of this suggests a secondary supernatural being. And if that's the case, what's the most likely candidate? Now, the sheer brutality of the attack suggests a werewolf to me.
But they don't do subtle.
The brutality is, regrettably, all we really have to go off of. Some point...
I should probably explain what I said. When I say subtle, I mean in the sense that if a werewolf decided to kill someone, is there anyone here who would force them to not continue doing so? I mean, maybe Big D and maybe Blacklaw for all I know, because Big D seems to be treating him as a rival. Honestly, I feel like I'm stretching even saying that.
To the claw marks on this dresser,
only
but
3.
Those were present before Fatigue's death. So
5
this could
there.
suggest that if there is a werewolf in here, that they've undergone transformations before now, but that's the only evidence that we've got. Some people theorize that Spit underwent his first transformation into a werewolf and accidentally killed Fatigue while doing so. This is plausible and would certainly be the most obvious answer, but I don't know how likely it is, mainly due to one thing, his clothing. When a werewolf undergoes their first change,
he's still wearing it.
Keep their clothes intact. They have to undergo rituals and training to do that.
Oh,
if
they can?
Is Spit's first transformation, he is an extremely naturally gifted werewolf. There's also his age. We know that he went to school with Marcus, and we know that Marcus is at least 30. Most werewolves undergo their first change when they're in their teenage years. I don't think it's Spit personally. I think he's suffering from the delirium, the supernatural panic humans undergo when dealing with werewolves that Dee mentioned in his and Kitten's talk.
I mean, let's be completely fair here. He's maybe dealing with the delirium, but also he's dealing with literal, oh God, it's on me. It's in my mouth. What is going on? Ah, well, there's enough going on right there that you don't even need the delirium to knock him the fuck out right now. I know for a fact I would probably have pissed myself and gone catatonic if I hadn't just died from shock right there, because I am a coward and this would be enough to kill me.
This doesn't explain his freakout from before Fatigue's death, but it explains the freakout after. There's all manner of stuff. People stealing stuff from other people's pockets, which casts suspicion on everyone. Elise steals Giles' cigarettes, keys, and wallet, which suggests her being a traitor, only to then be smoking them, not really hiding this fact, and seemingly giving the smokes to the staff, which may suggest she just wants to screw with Giles and that she might actually get on with the staff. Giles did harass her at the pub after all. Look, if I go down this route, looking at every single aspect of incriminating evidence for everyone, we'd be here all day. We wouldn't get to the actual conclusions for a while, so I'm going to go to who I think are the ones responsible, and then present the evidence that I think condemns them. So who do I think is the ghoul? I think it's Grimmel.
Really?
I really hope that I'm wrong on that. I adore Grimmel. I really, really do.
Admittedly, it wouldn't be the first time they've had a ghoul, but I'm not sure I would. I just realized they have this set up in such a way. Nah, it's probably unrelated. It's not like he has a bunch of blue sheets and... I'm not going to think about this.
But I can't lie. I think that she's the one who has the most evidence that makes the most sense and the strongest case against her. Throughout her appearance in the clubbing audio log, a lot of subtle importance is placed on her. She's easily the one that speaks the most, has the most characterization given, and impacts the plot the most next to Marcus. Her character is called to attention the most, while Elise and Harry are left more or less completely alone. We know next to nothing about Harry or Elise, but we know plenty about Grimmel. And you wouldn't do this for a character that you didn't have plans for fairly soon. And again, in Chapter 4, out of all of Marcus's group of friends, she's the one with the most emphasis put onto her. That alone isn't enough to go off of, but I have more. Let's go through some of the information that we have, shall we? 1.
That's an interesting thing to say, that the reason that she's a suspicious person is because of the emphasis put on her, and that they didn't just jump into her story. I think they're slowly playing out her story, which still could be factoring into everything he's about to say. But Grimmel just feels off to me, at least as far as the ghoul goes. If only because I think they're saving her for later, and I mean, I could be convinced otherwise, But that's just because I'm so hung up on Occam being it, because the easiest person to corrupt would be the guy in charge. And I've already made my opinions on that known. Grimmel, though, I could see her being a collaborator. I could see her doing something, maybe being aware of it. Being the ghoul itself, though, would she have enough access to actually use anything there, though? That I don't know.
We know that she's been in the Arcanum for a while. How long precisely, we don't know. But we do know that she and Kitten knew one another before Dee and his family came back to England. We also know that Kitten has been in the know about the supernatural since he was in university. In England, the youngest that most people go to university is when they're 18. On average, most courses take 3 or 4 years. We know that Kitten knew about vampires because he had an encounter with one at university. We do know that she was arguably the first person he knew was also in the know about the supernatural. Assuming that they're both roughly the same age, give or take a year or two, according to my research, Kitten is in his mid-30s. We also know that Kevin is 27, and mentioned a secret that he knew the region had years ago. We're making a lot of assumptions here, but if they're right, then that places Grimmel in the time frame that Kevin is describing. 2. In the pubbing audio log, it is mentioned that Grimmel often sneaks into the vents to listen in on the more senior members of the chapter house talking about subjects that lower ranking members aren't supposed to.
That, I think I remember this part, and hell, he's pulling it up now, so that makes sense. The only reason I wouldn't say that this is evidence for her being the ghoul is because they're talking about it. That is my biggest reasoning not to believe it. Because if it's the big reveal, you do a lot of things before saying, oh yeah, she sneaks around. That is narratively, I think, would be missing a step there. Because, oh my God, the person who is hiding out and finding all the information is the person we already knew was hiding out and finding all the information. It doesn't have a narrative thrust there. And I trust Bruv Alphabooz's team enough that they wouldn't make this. Now, this is not based on in-universe information. This is not based on anything plot-related. It's based on narrative tropes that have some good merit when done well. And maybe it could be pulled off that way, but that I'm going to disagree on this one, if only because that seems to make it more likely that she's not going to, but maybe playing the part of the next person to die because she saw something when she was hiding. You know, let's go back to her being the ghoul and not the one who may or may not have a death flag being waved right now. I don't want to think about that. I like her as a character. I would like her to be around more, thank you.
Which is a very suspect thing to do at the best of times. 3. After her fight with Kitten, we get a map which shows us where everyone is, and
oh yeah, I completely forgot about this. And Grimmel is not on it. No, she's in the security room. Staff break, office. And he was in the music room. Yeah, still ignoring this one down there. Elite access in the explosion room. Lovely.
In the layout of the chapter house, if we look at Grimmel's Arcanum license, we see that she has student access clearance. Going back to the map, she's in the security room, looking at the key, and then back at the room.
I mean, we already knew she was hot. She would have seen whatever's happening because she was on the cameras. Oh. I'm going back to my idea that she saw something because she's sneaking around. And that makes that death flag look, nope, not thinking about, not saying it. It is no, don't know.
That room doesn't have student access. She shouldn't be there. So how
the
hell
did
she get in there
already
in the first place? On top of that, when Kitten speaks to the staff, Matilda mentions that the security room is the most ventilated room in the building. And
yeah.
Vents. The thing that Grimmel goes through to listen to information that she shouldn't have access to. 5. When they're all walking through the archive, we see this frozen caveman here. And if we look here, that looks like a vent to me.
I can see it, but honestly, the motion blur throws it off a bit. If it wasn't for there, maybe it would be easier to tell.
Has displayed a tendency to go through the vents, and when everyone splits off, we know that she is in the single most ventilated room in the building, and we can see what looks like a vent, which is being used to keep the frozen caveman cold. Remember,
admittedly, if that's how they get in, that is a massive security breach. Also rendering all security kind of useless.
Her fight with Kitten and her splitting off from the group happened straight after they all left Occam to his rituals. She's in the right place, she's there at the right time, and she's unaccounted for until...
Because it would lead right into it.
Ockham is discovered, and she's attached enough to the chapter house and the people in it that I don't think she'd want to kill any of them. Everything fits. There's also a slightly more subtle clue that's hinted at in the clubbing audio log, where she's implied to be a lot tougher than she looks, able to fight against Brock and his goons, and she's also able to help carry Marcus after he's injured, despite the massive size difference between the two of them. And we know that ghouls tend to be a lot stronger than regular humans. Chapman brags about that much. I think that this is fair.
Maybe. Okay, he's making a very valid point here. I might be coming around to this idea. Also, it doesn't hurt that the idea that she's being set up as the next person to die because she saw something and that means she has the death flag waving is something I don't want to contemplate. So I still think it's Occam. For all I know, he did it to himself. But it would also make sense if there was someone else helping. Someone keeping an eye on Big D through his kids, who they had a relationship with, and would want to still be aware of them might help. But that also still means Grimmel would be the ghoul as well. Okay, Cosmic, I think you're winning me over on this one.
Fairly airtight. But that's not even my main reasoning for her being the ghoul. I think it's her because it makes the most narrative sense, and is more in line with the demon prophecy. Kitten takes comfort when fighting the supernaturals by dehumanizing them and referring to vampires as not being the person that they were before, but something else wearing the
Edward Davies skin. Okay, taken that way, that makes sense, because this is referring to the prophecy, and we've already seen how everyone else other than Kitten was more or less shown that, we're going to do something we don't know about and make a mistake, which is what happened in the third episode when they forced diabolization. However you say it. This might be Kitten's version of that, where he's the one forcing the anti-vampire logic and being confronted with a ghoul. Although at that point, it would make more sense narratively for her to be a ghoul, not a ghoul, a flat-out vampire as opposed to a ghoul. But I think we've seen her in... Have we seen her during the daytime only, or was it night? I need to go rewatch the initial video on the 4th episode to see what time of day they entered at. Because I thought it was day, but also it could be night, and I legitimately do not remember. And we saw the outside during it, so it's probably not. That'd be way too much of a specific incident.
The skin of who they used to be. Now, he can say that, but I don't think he's emotionally prepared to write Grimmel off that way. The two of them fight, and it's obvious the Kitten has a lot of anger towards her, but I don't think he is at the I actively wish her dead level of anger. Yeah. I think that dealing with a supernatural Grimmel would seriously impact and affect him, and Marcus and Grimmel get along, so he's obviously not going to be gung-ho about doing what needs to be done to her. And Dee just so happens to have a vampire back home which could provide blood for a ghoul if needed, like with Chapman. And the reveal that Dee is keeping a vampire alive and has an alliance with it, that would...
Alive. Good choice of words there.
Would probably infuriate Dor. Dor hates vampires. To him, they're not people. To see Dee treating one like a friend or a person and going to bat for them
Dorn
will
heresy,
cause a
maybe?
major rift between the whole family. To me, the evidence is there, and that there are plenty of good narrative reasons for it to be Grimmel. Why she's ended up like this, if it was willing or not, that I don't know. She doesn't seem too willing. But then why didn't she come forward when Occam asked the ghoul to? Gee, I don't know, maybe it had something to do with the fact that he threatened to fucking burn them to death.
But that's also why I'm thinking it's Occam. He doesn't want to hurt his own people. And it's a very easy threat to make when you are the person. So no one's going to find any of you because all of you are innocent. We'll just be very confused and then I'll get attacked so I don't have to prove it. Also, am I the only one who keeps looking at this and going, that kind of just looks like a balding version of Marcus? Am I the only one thinking that right now? It's probably just me.
Again, I really hope I'm wrong.
I'm trying to ignore that clown
least,
chair.
I hope that Grimmel doesn't die. So that's the ghoul.
Also, I just realized that's a clown mask on top of what's probably a skeleton head. Oh, that's disturbing.
About the werewolf idea. If it's not Spit when he's right there covered in blood and the only other person in the room with Fatty when he died, who the hell else could it be? My guess? This lady here, Matilda Wilde. So my evidence for her being a werewolf is a hell of a lot less solid than my evidence.
I mean, her name's literally Wild. Her handwriting looked completely wild. It seems almost like a red herring level of obvious. But Occam's razor, it's so obvious it's probably true, but also maybe not.
Evidence for Grimmel, it's mostly down to her being a complete and utter prick. Like, she is utterly asocial and rude and contemptuous of basically everyone and everything around her. Most werewolves hold a lot of human society in sheer contempt. The conflict for werewolves is that they serve Gaia, which is the spirit of the earth, basically. There are a multitude of corrupting forces, and much of humanity's civilizational excesses contribute to that corruption. A spirit known as the worm, with a Y instead of an O. I'm oversimplifying again, but basically...
Also, the odd part there, because he's pointing at though, it's worm with a Y, but technically that is another word for dragon. So just throwing it out there. I thought he would mention it. Apparently, he might do it later.
Imagine werewolves as deity-ordained eco-terrorists, and you'll understand them pretty clearly. Yeah. They're also very proud creatures. Matilda seems to be completely unfazed by the existence of the supernatural, which is contrasted next to her co-worker Amanda, who is mostly baffled, and then...
This is why I'm thinking something else is going on. It's for the same reason I said that, and again, for all the reasons he's saying she could be the one, it's loose. I wouldn't be surprised if she is the werewolf, and she's the one who's actually doing it. If only because she's such a good distraction. But I just don't know enough. For example, why there would even be a werewolf in the first place.
Uneasy and concerned as she starts to realize that the rest of them are not screwing around. Matilda remains completely unfazed, even after seeing Occam having been assaulted. She lacks many basic social graces. She spits on the floor when referred to as the help, which, I mean, I get it, it's disrespectful, but I feel like spitting on the floor is a bit of an excess. She basically takes every opportunity she can to just be kind of a twat to people around her. The sheer level of contempt that she has may be indicative of a general dislike of civilization and of...
I mean, I'll be completely honest here. I never really thought it was too unusual, just because having worked in a service industry where you've had to do someone's dishes and clean up, this level of disdain seems appropriate. So maybe it's just me, maybe it's my bias, but it doesn't feel like I'm a supernatural predator who holds everyone in contempt. It's more, I've had to deal with this shit and I'm just done with it. Hate all y'all. Again, a little biased, but I'm standing by it, unfortunately.
Of humans, whom many werewolves aren't especially fond of. Werewolves can also manifest into three main forms. Humanoid form, when they're pretty much indistinguishable from a regular human. A wolf form, where they're indistinguishable from a wolf. And a war form, where they look like the stereotypical werewolf. Yeah. Depending on which one of these they're more inclined to, it can impact their attitudes in the other. For example, a werewolf who is more inclined towards their human form will be a lot better at interacting with human civilization, but...
Didn't they both enter at the same time? If anything, that would imply that she's the werewolf as well, and just more inclined towards the human aspect.
Not especially good at hunting, and a wolf form might be better at working with nature, but not so good at working with civilizational situations. Another bit of evidence for this is Matilda's Arcanum license. Look at this handwriting. Don't judge people by their handwriting and all that, but this...
Okay, I'm feeling called out right now. That is, cleaner than mine. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, she's wild. She's a werewolf. She hates civilization. It's neater than anything I can print if I try. Yep.
This is barely even legible. It looks like she's never had to write before in her entire life.
Right here, Cosmic.
Also, wild, as in she's from the wild.
It's so
Ergo, her
obvious,
last
though.
name is Wild. Werewolves don't tend to have last names, so I suspect that this was the best she could come up with. There is also one other piece of information which, if I'm right, may explain her hostility.
Oh?
Werewolves are very susceptible to falling into primordial otherworldly anger during a full moon. They call it the rage.
Oh?
They can constantly feel it gnawing at them, and it can occasionally turn into a frenzy. In werewolves, this is unchecked, instinctual savagery. They can even attack their teammates if they're not careful. And the literal first thing in Chapter 4...
Breaking into the hall of a mystical order because my grandpa told me to.
We see Dee throwing a door open, silhouetted...
It's also night and it's a full moon.
By a full moon. My theory is that Matilda is a werewolf.
And my theory about Grimmel that I'm throwing out there, because her being a ghoul doesn't make nearly as much narrative impact as her being a vampire that they don't want to kill. And they definitely may or may not, depending on how they want to take this narratively. Or the death flags. Grimmel is a vampire, dies saving them. Would Proof Alpha Boosa be so evil that he would take a character people love and have them die horribly and maybe end an entire series about that after 30 plus episodes, and you're just sitting there going, oh god, that's the end? It's just, no, technically he didn't. It's just where the show had to stop rather than where it was going to.
Probably one used to living more reference. In the wild as part of a cairn, a werewolf pack.
You know, I just realized, other than the eye positions, they're making the same face. And as soon as she's acting that way, she looks over. I wonder if the rose tattoo means anything. Because that is a massive tattoo, admittedly. And the art on that would be intense to just get in. I'm not sure if my Mike picked that up, but my wife is playing with the cats outside. And it sounds like the cats are winning. I am too afraid to double check, so I'm going to pretend I didn't hear it.
Likely one that spends far more time in wolf or werewolf form and thus lacks a lot of experience or tolerance for civilization. What she's after in the Yarmouth chapter house, I've nary a clue. That I can't even begin to speculate with someone else. On. It could be that the werewolves simply don't want anyone looking into them. It depends on the pack. Werewolf packs are as diverse as vampire clans, so it's difficult to make any real generalizations. But, well, there we go. Those are my theories. Grimmel is the ghoul and Matilda is the werewolf. But what about Spit?
He's unfortunate. There is other possibilities. Maybe he's a mage, and that was... throwing it out there. It's a dumb idea. I don't even believe it, having said it right now. Maybe he's a mage, and what happened wasn't someone ripping him apart. It was a paradox, and he was trying to heal him, and that's what ripped him apart. Yeah, I don't believe it either. That's a stupid idea.
Kept rambling on about having issues focusing and his head screaming at him. What's his deal if he's not involved in any of this? I'm not sure. He could just have mental issues. That is fully possible.
Yeah.
But there is a possibility that he's been imbued. Basically, some hunters in Hunt of the Reckoning are contacted by messengers. Who and what they are, no one has a clue. But they give their chosen person information, awareness, and in some case, abilities, which they are then able to use and are meant to hunt monsters. It's possible that that's what he's experiencing and he's simply overwhelmed. The wiki seems to talk about these imbued like they're hearing phrases and words trying to get them to...
Wait, one of them's named Fyodor? They actually have a character named Fyodor. Oh, come on, Cosmic. You had to have picked him explicitly because of that. Fyodor Karamazov was the TTS boogeyman who became a vessel for the Emperor, who was still not on the throne, like the Star Child version of him. But he was a massive enemy until he was basically kind of amazing. And he was a crazy cool character the entire time. So here we have a guy who's canonically getting this information, and his name Fyodor is... They don't even... This is... I'm wondering if he's going to have to bring this character in just because it matches too well now. And Cosmic, thank you for bringing this up, because I would have never known.
To act or do something. I wonder if this might be why Spitz utterly freaks out when he reached Matilda. The messenger might be trying to warn him about her, and he's utterly freaked out by it, which is why he reacts in such a major way.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that he's been imbued would fit, but it's also the one with the least actual proof to it, so I thought I'd just mention it in passing. And with that...
Also, I just realized they have the Ogre popping on the logo back there.
We've run out of Furies to go over for now. God, I'm tired. Do you agree or disagree? A lot of these are patchworked, merely speculative, or my own thoughts on the matters. What I'm hoping for more than anything is that the HTTP community can put their collective heads together and see if we can figure this one out.
To see if anyone had ideas.
The HTTP community is a lot of fun and very chill, and between everyone out there's a lot of information that we have, so maybe we can put all of that together. Maybe some of you noticed something that I missed. This has been an unusual style of video for me, and time will tell if I prove that I have psychic powers or if I'm an idiot. But in any case, I'm gonna
take my opinion. Believe you're an idiot and be happy and surprised when you're not. It doesn't happen often, but I take it when I can.
Go pass out. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be seeing you in hopefully something different next time. See ya.
Small update. I was checking out the comments again, and I somehow missed completely that the very top comment was from Dr. White, who's part of this entire, well, I guess, company? Ogre Papanon, whatever. Who's been with Broov Alpha Booster from the beginning, as far as I know. And they put in this, which is a pile of gibberish. Cosmic immediately asked for people to decode it. Down just a little further, IROT 1995 put in a base 64 decoder, said it was Clippy Can't Die. A little further down, the biggest melons you never see, 1366, said that the very first game, first episode of Norfolk Wizard the Game, Mage the Ascension, Ogre Papanon Productions, is called Clippy is Dead. So we see the direct information there that it's a reference to whatever happened in their game itself. So we're probably getting some recursive bullshit where it might be based on a game they've played. In Mage. What does this mean? I don't know. And then there's Cosmic talking about how the antipsychotics Polydora was on, she found on D were from Norfolk, which is a Mage system, which is just thing. And then it's going even further down. I mean, I'm just looking at all this right now, and all I can say is congratulations, you win a cookie. Honestly, there's so much I wished I could share, but of course I can't. However, I can say, New World of NWG, I can't say this, and Hunter the Parenting take place. They're both the same universe and the same time frame. Not sure how much overlap the two will have, but connective threads are there. So there's the connection. Someone decoded, and it is actually going along with a game they've been playing. I have no idea what this is, because this is the first time I've heard about them doing a game in Mage. I know they did Warhams. I didn't realize they moved into this. Yeah. Also, I left a comment, and it was neat. I'm going to pretend this was me making a joke, and not that I should probably not type when tired. Yeah. Cosmic, thank you for making this. It's scratching that Hunter the Parenting itch that I've had, and I love that we're getting so much detail. You've pointed out a lot of things, finding out about Fyodor. It's cool, but also, god damn you, because you're just reminding me it's not out yet, and I still have to wait, and I hate this. So thank you, and damn you in equal measure. Also, I never got around to answering your last questions, and when I saved them, I kind of forgot about this, so that's on me. I meant to. And then I had goldfish memory, so that was a problem. Yeah. Either way, for everyone watching, if you haven't already, Cosmic Videos Void, there's a link down below. Hit it up. This was really good. And it's time to write this. He broke 10K followers finally. Or sorry, subscribers. The guy is doing a lot of good work. He's putting a lot of work in this. And you can, just because I can again, work. Yeah, I said it 3 times. Big numbers. Do that. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.